the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA096.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Okay, Taylor, we're recording.
Accept.
You accept? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to Doomed to Fail, the podcast where one of us is going to be sick for a while. And this time it's Taylor's turn. I'm joined here by Taylor, my co-host. Hi, Taylor.
Hello, how are you?
I'm probably better than you.
Yeah, I was sick this morning. I couldn't really talk when I woke up, and now I feel like a little bit better, but still like kind of dizzy.
Yeah, so we were discussing changing up the production schedule and recording more than one of these a week so that we can have moments where we're sick and not have to hop on and record while feeling shitty. So we'll make that a reality.
Vacation and stuff. Yeah,
exactly.
we'll do it.
Exactly.
We'll get there.
So Taylor, we are going to go through our drink schedule at this point. So why don't I tell you mine, then you can tell me yours. Mine is going to be Coors, which is a taste of the Rockies, because we're going to go to Colorado for the true crime side of our story today. So for my drink, we're going to be having some Coors because we are going to be in Colorado for the true crime side of our story today. And Coors is a taste of the Rockies. Apparently, they say that they brew it using water from the Rockies, I believe. But mostly they're famous because their cans turn blue, or the mountain turns blue when it's cold enough to drink. So I don't know why I'm giving people a lecture on what Coors is, as though people don't know it's like the most ubiquitous beer in the world, but there you go.
I'm like, is there a Coors that's not a Coors Light? Is there like a not light Coors?
I feel like I've seen like a yellow, tan, or champagne colored Coors before that feels like that might be the regular Coors.
That's right. It's like a champagne color, dude, right?
Yeah, but good for them. Good for their marketing and branding people, because that's more. I mean, when I think of Coors, I think Coors Light. Actually, kind of with Bud Light too.
Totally. I feel like I don't know anyone who's like, oh, I'll just have like a Budweiser, not light. But I don't know what that tastes like, so maybe I should try that too.
Should we?
Bud Light, you're like, I'm gonna drink a lot of these, so I'm gonna pretend this is like a diet food.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, another podcast idea. We'll reminisce about different alcohol things that we like. Katie of the Schmidt clan, I'm calling them, texted me this week saying there's definitely farting. They listened to the last episode and said there's farting from 7 minutes to 11 minutes. I went back and listened. People, it is my dog. Who would record themselves farting and then publish it publicly and advertise it publicly? Like, why would I do that?
I mean, I'm sure people do that and they get a lot of money for it, but that's a whole different ball game.
That's another genre. We are not. That is not the demographic I'm shooting for here. It's obviously coming from my end, but why would I do that? Because so Luna's gonna shake. When she shakes, her collar makes sounds, and then she'll tap on glass when she wants to be let out, or she'll like whine in the background. Like, I need to figure out what I'm gonna do with Luna. It's a dog.
That's so funny.
It is. I would never deliberately record myself farting and then posting it publicly to the world. So I don't know. Kincaid, Katie, y'all have a very similar perspective on this.
Yeah, maybe it's a you problem.
It's a them problem. Anyways, that's my rant. That's my quick rant for the day. But I'll okay. So let's get to your drink, Taylor.
Awesome. So I also have a little bit of notes from last week and some things I wanted to share. I'm drinking a hot toddy because my throat hurts, but that has nothing to do with my story.
Are you actually drinking a hot toddy?
Uh-huh.
That is awesome. I love hot
toddies.
It.
It's delicious. I made it out of honey and a little bit of lemon and some tea and some whiskey.
Did you use regular lemons?
Yes.
Okay, so here's a secret to like a phenomenal hot toddy. Use Meyer lemons, which are sometimes hard to come by.
But are they a little sweeter?
They're a little sweeter. They add this little kick to it. They just completely, because it's acidic, so it balances out the harshness of the bourbon, which is amazing. So yeah, nice. We really need to start an alcohol podcast, I think.
I'm in. That sounds fine. It's the thing that's going to kill me, so that's cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I have some notes from last week. R.E. Joe Rogan. Juan from California says Farz is on the wrong side of the pitchfork on this one.
Sorry, Juan from California. How convenient. Is this Juan Carlos, your husband?
It is my husband, yes. And
Yeah,
I'm
there we
laughing because
go.
it's also a Rick and Morty reference, which I thought was funny.
That's funny.
And then George from New York, who is my friend George, who lives in New York, says, "Here's what I'm willing to agree with about Joe Rogan. He has a podcast, he has guests, he has an audience. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk."
I mean, he nailed it. Nobody can
Um,
deny that.
Yep, all true, all true. I also have been having like a rough week in general because I'm just like wasn't feeling well. And so I've been thinking like I should be nicer to people who believe in God and not be such a jerk about it and have some balance, but I'm also just so mad. And I also saw something this week from a dad on LinkedIn who's like, how can dads do work-life balance? And I've just like never been so mad after reading that. And so I was like, I was wondering if there's some sort of like strangle thing you can buy to like strangle it to like get the rage out. That's where I'm coming from.
I
Um,
don't have children, so I don't understand the sentiment.
it's just like it's like a mom thing. Dads have no problem. Dads get paid more money. Dads are fine, you know? So whatever.
I
So
can't
I've just
speak
been like
to it.
I've been kind of mad this week. And another thing I've been annoyed about is, which I've slacked you about, is I've been like, hey, everybody, like our podcast and rate it. And then like no one does it. And I'm like, just do it. Because I'm a terrible salesperson. So I'm just like, I said so, so do it. So I'm gonna work on our pitch. I just added us to LinkedIn. I'm just trying to get in front of more people. So
I
that's
mean,
what I've been.
you gotta offer people something. Like I offered in that Facebook channel to send people autographed pictures of our face.
Yeah,
Nobody
and
took us up on it.
35 people saw it and like two people liked it. So no one wants that. I don't know. We have to think of something else.
We gotta think of someone else. Okay. Yep. Yeah,
Um,
alcohol recipe book by Farz and Taylor.
I love that. I love
There you
that.
go.
So I also, before I get started, wanted to say thank you to some people who are actively listening, to especially Christine and Kelly, who've been giving me a lot of feedback, and I know they listen to it every week, and it's really fun. So thank you both. Okay, so now after I've that's those are my notes and kind of where I'm coming from. But so of course we're doing like relationships and events and things that are failures throughout history. This relationship is one of the ones that kind of comes up first whenever you Google historical relationships that were like tumultuous and ended in tragedy. So I also was making a timeline that I showed you, and I'll post it on our socials. But I'm like, what timeline am I in when I'm talking about my historical things? And so much of it is like after 1600, which makes sense because there's records and it tracks, but there's so much stuff that happened before that. So I'm like, how can I find stuff that actually is ancient? And then it gets me into my two types of existential dread. I have like the future existential dread, like when will the robots kill us? When will we kill each other with nuclear weapons? When will the aliens kill us? When will nature kill us? How will nature kill us? You know, all those things that are normal.
You gotta stop watching the news.
I know. I also have historical existential dread, which is like, what don't we know? How can we possibly know anything? How are we gathering these stories from like remnants of clay pots and coins? And there's just so much that I don't know about, and I wish that we knew more. So, anyway, this is the best that I can do in 20 minutes of a topic that people spend their whole entire life studying, from like bits and pieces of pottery and the stories of the victors. So, I don't know. I don't know if this is true. It's kind of true, and it might as well be true, and it doesn't matter. It's very stressful. Um,
Is your point that whoever wins is the one who defines the story?
yeah. hmm
Yeah, that's fair.
Especially with these like super ancient stories, I just don't know. But I'm going to tell you as much as I can about Cleopatra and Mark Antony.
Oh, that's a
Um,
great one. Yeah, you know what?
yeah,
When you said the oldest story, I thought Cleopatra, and I was like, who was the guy? And I kept thinking it was that guy who Colin Farrell played in that movie, the biopic, where, oh my God, I have to edit this out. This is terrible. What's her name? Angelina
it's also,
Jolie was the mom,
oh, I don't remember.
remember? And then the asp killed her.
The asp kills Cleopatra, potentially,
So who's Colin
allegedly.
Farrell? So, wait, Colin Farrell's Mark Anthony then. I am right, right?
I guess I didn't watch that, but probably. There's also Caesar. She also was with Caesar for a little bit. So we'll get to that.
Hold on. I'm gonna look this up right now. What is the movie?
I didn't watch that movie. I did watch.
Alexander. That's what it is.
Okay.
Has nothing to do with your story. Yeah, I definitely have to edit this out.
Well, it's like similar, there's so many stories like of these dramas, and there's so many civil wars in this story that I'll talk about. Like, just it's constant battle. So if you're thinking of like what it was like to live at this time, and we are pre-zero, so we're in the BC times, which is, as I've already said, is really hard for me to go backwards in time. But I'll give you some dates. So we start in BC in this story, and I didn't watch that many like dramas, but I did listen to a Rest is History podcast. Definitely have learned the story from Dan Carlin. I watched Ancient Rome on Netflix, which is like half documentary, half show, which is kind of fun. And I also just was looking at an article on history.com. And then I don't know if I told you this, but when I was a little girl, I wanted to be an Egyptologist. That was like my dream. I like
It's
loved
really
it.
cool. Yeah. Hey,
Yeah. So I
do
had
you think we should go to Dan Carlin and ask him for sponsorship money at this point, given that we plugged him like every other episode?
yes.
All right.
I
I don't
think we
know how to
should go
get.
to his house
Uh,
in some way.
okay, I don't know how to get a hold of him. I guess we need an agent. Okay,
Yeah.
this might be a longer process than I thought.
Does anyone know Dan Carlin? Tell him we said hello. I mean,
Just write to us and let us know.
yeah. Um, oh, he's the best. Yeah, so I just loved ancient Egypt history. I think it was like, I don't know if it's still a big thing for like kids to know a ton about, but I had like hieroglyphic stamps. And I remember in like the 90s when my family moved to Las Vegas and the Luxor was brand new, I was just like, oh my God, just so excited about it. So loved hearing the history of Egypt because it's super interesting. It's also interesting as I like learn more, like the civilization of Egypt didn't change for thousands of years. And now this story is going to be the very end of Egypt as like being ruled by Egyptian pharaohs. So we're at the tail end of it. So, speaking of tail end and timelines, here are our main characters. There's Julius Caesar. He was born in 100 BC. There's Mark Antony. It's not Anthony, it's Antony, Antony, born Marcus Antonius in 83 BC. And then in 69 BC, Cleopatra the seventh Philopator was born in Egypt. So just thinking about, I wrote, oh Christ. So here's just like a little bit of their ages. Caesar's 17 years older than Mark Antony. He's 31 years older than Cleopatra, and Mark Antony is 14 years older than Cleopatra. If that matters, I'm just telling you how old they are.
Does it
Uh,
matter or no?
I mean, kind of. I mean, we have talked about like huge age differences. I think 31 years is a big age difference for
That's fair.
people dating.
Yeah.
But they also were very similarly like the similarly politically inclined and everything. So I don't think it was just that, but it is a pretty big difference. So this is something that, like I said, someone will spend their whole entire life studying and talking about, and I'm going to try to do it in 20 minutes, but I'll try to benchmark some dates around Cleopatra and her life. And then also remember we're going backwards because we're in BC time. So Julius Caesar, in a nutshell, and I think I mentioned him in the Nero episode as well. He is a general and a dictator of Rome. He was a big part of the end of the Roman Republic. So at this time, when we're in like the 50s, the 50 BCEs, Rome is having a ton of civil wars. So specifically, he's Caesar is in a civil war with Pompey, so Pompey, who was once part of the Triumvirate, which is a group of three who ruled Rome together around 60 BC. So that was Pompey, Caesar, and Crassus were trying to kind of stop the Roman Republic and turn it into an empire. And they had the Triumvirate, which was like the first group of people being like, we're going to our rule is higher than that of like the Senate, of like the democratic rule.
Yeah, this is just expansion, right? It's like a land grab.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pompey, who's one triumvirate, him and Caesar are potentially like they're friends. Like they're talking about, doing this, ruling together. And Pompey marries Caesar's daughter, Julia. And by all accounts, they did really love each other. But Julia died in childbirth and it devastated Pompey. And his relationship with Caesar was never the same, which is like a lot of this probably wouldn't have happened if Julia had lived because then they would have continued to kind of rule together. But they started to drift apart now that they weren't family anymore. So that's happening in Rome. There's a big civil war. In 51 BC, over in Egypt, Cleopatra becomes co-ruler when her dad, Ptolemy the Seventh, dies. She co-rules always with a man who's both her sibling and her husband, which is a thing. So she marries her brother, Ptolemy the Eighth. So it's a whole thing. It's a lot of
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Egyptian rulers. It's a whole bunch of marrying your brother or your cousin or whatever. Like it's very much like we've talked about a million times. Like you shouldn't do that. It makes bad
yeah.
rulers because of
And the
genetics.
At this point, it just feels like there's so many of these out there at this that we've already covered. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
the shock value of it's worn off.
Yeah, it's bananas. So she's married to her brother. He's younger than her, and they're co-ruling Egypt together. So just to talk about Cleopatra for a little bit, like as a person, obviously we don't know a ton about her. That's true. Like we know like the records that people have of her. She is one of the last pharaohs of Egypt. Civilization's been around for thousands of years, but we're here at the tail end. She was very smart and very charming. She spoke a ton of languages. One of the actual like kind of firsthand accounts comes from Plutarch. I think it's about 100 years after she died, but he wrote about that people said that she was known for her beauty and charm. She could speak several languages. She was very intelligent and quick-witted, captivating personality. She was very popular. So this is all stuff that we don't know for sure, but I think like the one thing that is maybe unfair to her and her like intellectual prowess is that conventionally she's not very pretty. So there's like busts and coins with her on them, and she's not like a perfect like beauty. So some people say that she was, and I feel like they might be using that as an excuse to be like, this is how she got so powerful because she was so beautiful and seductive. But she also like other people are like she wasn't that beautiful. So it's like a couple things that we like know about her that are facts. She was Greek, so she was from Macedonia, like Dan Carlin says, and which is in Greece, and she comes from like a long line of Greek emperors, of pharaohs of Egypt who are not ethnically Egyptian. She was one of the only pharaohs who bothered to learn how to speak Egyptian, just like Catherine the Great bothered to learn Russian when like other people hadn't. And people have had issues with like the movies that she's portrayed in, like Elizabeth Taylor and Gal Gadot is about to play her because they're white. But Cleopatra wasn't ethnically African or Egyptian. She was Greek. The issue that I have with those actors playing her is that they're gorgeous.
I
You
was gonna
know?
say, like,
Yeah.
you have Elizabeth Taylor, who's like, I guess, considered back in the day and even today, like one of the most iconically beautiful women that's ever existed. But you're saying
Hmm.
that she looked more like Buzz from Home Alone. Like, I don't know if,
She
like,
was just like
well,
a normal person. Like she wasn't like this astounding beauty, and I don't know if that matters. Like that's just I don't know. I don't know where that fits into her story, and I'd have to think about it for like years to try to make sense of it. But she wasn't like striking beautiful. Like Gal Gadot was distractingly beautiful, you know?
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, well, and it's also hard to tell because you're looking at like renditions that
yeah.
it's a painting. It's hard to really visualize. I mean, I'm looking at one of them, which was, it looks like a modern painting based off of a bust of
Yeah.
her face.
I mean the ones that you would like look at the coin. Like the coin of her is probably like the closest.
Yeah, she's got a Roman nose. Like you can tell,
Yeah.
she's definitely got a Roman nose. Like that's normal. That's
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah. So like some of my opinions on this are like beauty is subjective, A. So whatever. Are historians writing away her power as something she got from being so beautiful and sexy? Are they harping too much on her not being beautiful? Does it matter? Like, I don't know. But just so we know, like the answer, I think, and I think that we've maybe talked about this before in like the realm of like dating and relationships, it's just like be cool and people will like you, you
Yeah.
know? So like she was cool. And so, regardless of what she looked like, people liked her. And she got some dudes to like her too. So, that's a little bit about her, maybe what she looked like, maybe where she came from. In 48 BCE, she is forced to flee Egypt. She goes to Syria. Her and her brother husband, Ptolemy the Eighth, start a civil war. So there's a civil war in Rome and now a civil war in Egypt. So her and her brother are fighting for the pharaoh throne. In 48 BC, Julius Caesar arrives in Alexandria, which is a port city in Egypt. So this is where a lot of this like action takes place. It's at like the tip top of the Nile. And Alexandria was founded by Alexander the Great in 331 BCE, so it's been around for a while by this time. And it's a center of learning, culture, diverse populations like Greeks, Egyptians, Jews, other cultures. A lot of people live there, as well as obviously a ton of enslaved people live there as well. But it's the port city, lots of trade, grain, papyrus. Like it sounds very fun. Like it sounds like very bustling. The Library of Alexandria is still there. It has between 40,000 and 400,000 scrolls, all this like information. That lighthouse that we talked about is one of the wonders of the ancient world. That was still standing. Education was really highly valued. So it's like a pretty cosmopolitan city for being in BC times.
Yeah, sounds like King's Landing, kind of.
Yeah, it probably is. Like all these are very similar. to like things that we've heard in fantasy things. So we're in 48 BC. Pompey and Caesar have just had a huge battle. I cannot pronounce this. It's the Battle of Pharsalus, and a lot of Romans died. And so I've been saying there's been a bunch of civil wars. Like these are legions that are going back and forth between civil wars. There's been so many. So imagine if in like the U.S. Civil War, the North and South fought, and then it ended, and they were like, great, now it's East and West, and now it's tall people versus short people, and now it's like this versus this, and it just goes on
Jeez.
forever. And so like you're fighting someone that you fought with last year, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, this year we're enemies because of something new. And
Sounds tiring.
yeah. So Pompey and Caesar, they used to be almost related because of Caesar's daughter. Now they're in this fight. So many people have died. Pompey gets to Alexandria a little before Caesar, and he asks Ptolemy to help him. So he says, "Help me defeat Caesar." And Ptolemy wants to have Caesar on his side. So in his own civil war against Cleopatra. And so he cuts Ptolemy, Cleopatra's husband, brother, cuts off Pompey's head and gives it to Caesar when Caesar arrives, because he knows that Caesar's coming to Alexandria as well. And he does this to be like, hey, I want you to be on my side. Look what I did for you. I killed Pompey. And
Such a morbid gift.
it is. And Julius Caesar, surprisingly, is not happy. He's like, ew. Like he's upset. And there's like some things that are like a lot of conjecture, like why is he upset? Like they've been fighting for years. They used to be friends, they're fighting for years. Tons of like normal people have died during these like battles and this huge war. But I imagine, this is what I think happened reading about this as little as I have, that seeing the head of someone who you used to be friends with, who was married to your daughter, who almost brought you a grandchild, it's a little bit of like a fuck, how'd I get here? Just
I
like,
mean,
oh
but like
shit.
all like I don't know. I think just as a general rule, kind of like we always say, like don't kill your family. Also, just never give somebody a human head. Like it's just never going to be
Yeah,
received well.
no, that's definitely fair. It's a good life rule. I think I can stick by that one. Yeah, it totally makes sense. So like definitely not like a silver platter with like a thing over the top, like that's not great.
Yeah.
So Caesar's not impressed, but he's in Alexandria, and now Ptolemy, it's hard to say Ptolemy because it starts with a P, so hopefully I'm getting it right, but it's Ptolomey. So Ptolemy is like, okay, well now Caesar, since you're not happy about this like great gift I bought you, he puts him sort of in jail in Alexandria and is trying to wait to figure out what his next step is. So while Caesar is stuck in Alexandria, Mark Antony is in charge of Rome. So he's been like a high up general in Caesar's army for a whole time, and he does a pretty bad job. He's just like living a nice life in Rome while people of Rome are starving, which we've seen again and again, and we're only on episode 13. But another thing that I think we could maybe stand by is it seems like if you just feed people, everyone will be happy. You know?
Yeah. There's got to be
Like,
something biologically in humans that once they attain a certain level of success, they just literally cannot think like normal
yeah, they
humans
just like
anymore.
can't can't remember that like, oh, maybe I should, spend money on the people that I rule rather than a gold hat, or like anything else. It's just so crazy.
Did you ever watch that interview that Ellen did with Bill Gates back in the day?
Mm-mm.
People would like ask him how much he thinks things cost, and he was like so
Oh,
comically off on it. I think he said like a banana is probably $20 because he just doesn't
oh my
know. Like he just
gosh.
they're so out of touch.
You're right. No, that's definitely fair. Like they're just like so far away from it that they can't even imagine like what do you mean you can't? Like Marie Antoinette saying let them eat cake. She didn't really say that, but like the idea is like, well, we have all this cake here. Why don't they just have this? But you're like, no, they have nothing. Like you don't understand like what it's like to live on like that side of the spectrum.
Did she really
Totally.
say that? I could have sworn
No,
that I heard somewhere that she said something different.
she didn't say that. No,
Yeah,
no.
that
And
was
most of it, I
revisionism.
yeah, that's definitely revision, but she did not say that. But it's the same idea that like if you're living in a place where like you've never been hungry, you don't really understand what it could possibly be like for people who are
Yeah,
hungry.
of course.
So that's what's happening in Rome. There's also riots in Rome, tons of riots during this time. A lot of people are starving. Rome has a population of about 1 million people at this point, so there's a lot of people there, which is a huge city even in now times. Famously, Cleopatra comes back to Alexandria. She sneaks in to come to Caesar's aid and asks him to take her side. So some of the rumors are that she came rolled up in a carpet. So like they brought him a carpet and it unrolled and she was like, ta-da! I'm here, or in like a linen bag, or like in a box, or like whatever. Like she came in like a fun way and surprised him because she had to sneak back in. And so he likes her. He likes her, likes the cut of her jib. He likes this like trick that she did. He likes that she speaks all these languages. She's really smart. He's in his 50s, she's in her 20s, but they see something in each other and they start a relationship. So in 47 BCE, Cleopatra gives birth to their son, who she names Caesarion. So they have one child together. And another thing about like Cleopatra being like this like crazy temptress, it's probably that she only had like two lovers in her whole life, and they were Caesar and Mark Antony. Like that might have been it for her.
Sweet.
So the next year,
I'm by the way, Taylor, just so you know, I'm actually looking up if we named them cesarean sections because of this guy.
yeah, can you tell me more about that? Let me know what you find because I don't know what that means. It's
So
weird.
it's not spelled like the way we spell cesarean
Mm.
section, but let's see. I'm gonna put a finer point on this. Why do we call them cesarean sections? Roman law under Caesar decreed that all women who were so fated by childbirth must be cut open, hence cesarean. Other
Really?
possible Latin origins include the verb sedere, meaning to cut, and the term
Oh,
caesones, that was applied to infants born by post-mortem operations.
ew. That makes
That
sense. Like the mom
is,
dies, they just take it out. Gross.
yeah, but I don't like it. That doesn't actually like whatever. So it is definitely Roman in nature, but we don't
Hmm.
know where the word actually originates from. But it sounds, I mean, it had to be like something related to this guy.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know, again, like talking about like fake things, like in the new Game of Thrones show, The House of the Dragon, there's a ton of childbirth and death in childbirth, but when they do perform a cesarean, they're like the mom is not gonna live, they just cut her open. They're like this is like its last chance to like get the baby out. And then I did also see something on Instagram a while ago about maybe when that was happening that like midwives or whatever they're called in Africa have been performing them for like hundreds of years because they knew how to do things like wash their hands with alcohol and like make a small cut and get the baby and take care of the mom and like all the things that like we didn't figure out in the West until like 100 years ago,
Wow.
which is super interesting. Yeah. So anyway, also this dude's name's Caesarion, which is just that if it is related to that, it means to cut and somehow whatever. So they have a son, his name's Caesarion, and then Caesar defeats Ptolemy the Eighth and restores Cleopatra to the throne of Egypt. Ptolemy, Cleopatra's brother husband, dies in the Nile. He drowns while escaping. She may have had that might have been on purpose, like making sure that he didn't survive while he was escaping Alexandria. So the next thing that she has to do is marry her other brother, Ptolemy the Ninth, who I think is like an infant at this time. She just like has to be married to someone else in order to rule. She can't like technically do it by herself, which is dumb, but she's married to her infant brother now, but she's definitely like dating Caesar. And she also has her annoying sister, Arseny, killed. And in one of the podcasts I listened to, they described Arseny as the Prince Harry of Egypt. So you can make your own assumptions about how annoying she was. But I thought
Wait,
that
is
was
Harry
interesting.
annoying?
Yes.
Okay. You feel, see, we decide, I think, at some point, Taylor, that one of us feels strongly about one thing and the other one doesn't. Like, I don't have any opinion of him, so I'm gonna go with your version of who Harry is.
We just watched the South Park from this past season about him and Meghan Markle, where they do go on a worldwide privacy tour, and during the tour, Harry's like playing his drums and has a sign that says like "Leave us alone, stop staring at me." It's really funny because they're like holding these signs that are like "Stop looking at me, leave me alone, we want our privacy," but they're like yelling it in the middle of all the town squares. So like
Yeah,
that's an idea what they're doing right now. Yeah. So
South Park nails
all
it.
of yeah, so all of her siblings are dead. She's co-ruling with her baby sibling. They stay in Alexandria for a while, and they both go to Rome. And so we've talked about this before. 44 BCE, Ides of March 15th. Julius Caesar's assassinated. He's stabbed to death in the Senate. After his death, Cleopatra returns to Egypt. So she was there while he was murdered, and she had to like get out fast. So she
Wow.
got out of Rome super fast, took Caesarion with her. They went back to Alexandria and they did some ruling of Egypt there together. In 41 BCE, Mark Antony is now part of the second triumvirate, so a second group of three dudes who are trying to rule Rome together. And he summons Cleopatra to Saris, which is a place where he like wanted to get her to be an ally for to him. So they have this meeting. They might have met before, but the myth around this meeting is that she arrived on like a golden barge, like carried by enslaved people with like purple sails and oars of silver, and she made herself to look like the goddess Aphrodite. And there's like a gold canopy, and she people dressed like Cupid, and just like a really big like show going into to meet him. And Mark Antony loved it because he thought he was he thought he was the embodiment of the Greek god Dionysus. So like he was a lot. And but
She
he loved the show.
she loves these grand entrances.
Yeah, she loves it. And I think that's probably because she knows that like these dudes love that shit. You know,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, you make me feel special." So that was totally working for them. And so they had a lot of fun together. They had a group called the Imitable Lovers, which was like a group of people that would hang out every night and have like a game night and drink a lot and eat a lot and like just have a lot of fun. By 37 BCE, Mark Antony and Cleopatra have had three children together: Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selina, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. They rule Egypt for a little while during this time as well. The rule is loose because they're children, but the children are like definitely heirs to the Egyptian throne. And so they have those kids in 37 BCE. They're living together. They're super happy. But Mark Antony's actually been married this whole time from 40 to 32 BC. So in the middle of this, he was married to Octavia the Younger. And she seems nice. They had some kids, but he wants to marry Cleopatra and they get divorced. And in 32 BC, he does marry Cleopatra. So she's his like fifth wife. He's already been like married a bunch of times, but they finally do get married. And then we're almost to the end, and there's so much more that happens during this. But so the second triumvirate is Mark Antony, a man named Lepidus, and Octavian. Octavian sounds like Octavia, you may have noticed, is the brother of Octavia, who Mark Antony was married to, and he's pissed because he's like, you were very clearly having another family with Cleopatra in like
Oh,
under
so this
my
wasn't normal. This isn't like how they just do things.
yeah, like he they like it was like kind of normal, everybody knew, but like also Octavian was like fuck you for doing this to my sister, and got was like there are other things, but he was like really mad. And so this turns into another civil war between people. And Cleopatra and Mark Antony are on one side, and Octavian is on the other side. And there's a big battle called the Battle of Actium. So many people die because of these people's personal problems, but
Yeah.
Cleopatra and Mark Antony, they lose. They lose the battle. They flee to Egypt. Antony knows that they're defeated. As a rumor, this feels maybe a little too romantic to be true, but that he hears that Cleopatra is already dead, so he stabs himself. And then he finds out that she's not dead, and they bring him to her, and he dies in her arms, which is like Romeo and Juliet. And also, there is a Mark Antony and Cleopatra Shakespeare play that I have not seen or read, but it sounds a little too good to be true. But he dies first. He dies by
So
suicide, stabs himself in the stomach.
so that is what happened.
Yeah,
Wait, so why do you
yeah.
say you don't believe it?
Well, no, I don't believe necessarily that he killed himself because he thought that she was already dead. You know,
I see. I see.
like they
So he
were
might
like
have just
separated. Yeah,
had suicidal ideations on his own
yeah,
volition. Yeah.
yeah. Because they knew that they were like going to be in trouble because they just lost this big battle and they've lost control of Rome and Egypt. So she does get to organize his funeral. She knows that he has died, and the sort of next step for Cleopatra is there is a thing that they do in Rome when you return from battle is you get to have a triumph, and a triumph is like a big parade. So one thing that Caesar did a long time ago was he like, had his own triumph, which you're technically not allowed to do. It has to be like approved by the Senate, and people were really mad. But it's like a huge parade where you're like, I am victorious. I came back, and you parade through Rome with your spoils of war. And one of the spoils of Octavius winning this battle was going to be Cleopatra. He was going to come back and kind of like parade her through Rome and be like, look what I did. I like won the war, and now this pharaoh is mine. So she doesn't want that to happen. She doesn't want to be a part of that at all. So she dies by suicide as well, possibly by asp. And that's the thing that maybe she had a snake bite her, or like a cobra, or like some kind of cool snake that killed her. It also could have been that she kept poison in like a hairpin to kill her to kill herself with. But either
Yeah.
way,
So
she died.
apparently, yeah, like that's an asp is just like the old-timey way to say any venomous snake, but it sounds like
Right.
it is probably a reference to a very specific Egyptian cobra.
How scary is that? If that was
What
like,
a horrible, horrible choice.
yeah, like what do you
To
do? Do you
lo-
like put your hand near it, or do you like let it near you until it strikes, or do you like try to scare it? Like it's just so scary to be like, I purposely want this thing to bite me, even without knowing that, without the dying part, just like trying having to get that close
yeah,
to a snake, so scary.
because like I think the way that the venom of a cobra works is that it causes coagulation in the blood that's in your body. So it's not like
Yeah.
a chill death. It's like you're turning kind of to stone from the inside out. Like it's a horrible. I mean, just
Oh,
throw yourself off a roof or something. Like that sounds so much better.
it does sound so much better. So that sounds terrible. Hopefully it was quick, but now they're both dead. And the kids, their three children, do go back to Rome with Octavian. Octavian is actually he gets renamed as Augustus, so he's the first emperor of Rome. And we talked about this in one of our first episodes because the fifth emperor of Rome is Nero, so we're a little bit before Nero, who we talked about before. But Augustus, formerly Octavian, is the first emperor of Rome, and that now Rome is an empire and is going to do a whole bunch of stuff all in this ancient time. And then I guess the last thing that I wanted to say is, which I thought was interesting, is that their kids, the three kids that Mark Antony and Cleopatra had. So Caesarion dies in one of these battles, so she has those three kids left, and they go back to Rome, and they're raised by Octavia, who is the sister of the emperor and the ex-wife of their dad, and she raises all of the kids together, and they live for a while longer.
Hey, wasn't Nero's mom named Octavius?
She was, I guess, an A,
Okay.
Agrippina.
Then wasn't he married to someone named Octavius?
I'm sure there was.
Maybe it's a common name.
It is, no, it's not. It's common as in like, yep, we're definitely in. This is the beginning of that family line. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because he is going to be, wait, yeah, one of his spouses was Claudia Octavia. So she was one of the empresses, and she is, yeah, it's like they all know each other and they're all related and all of that stuff that we know. So she's part of the Claudian house, which is what Nero is, and yeah, so sort
Do,
of.
do you remember during that episode how you said he went somewhere and was in like 1,000 singing competitions, and you were like, how many
Yeah.
do you think he won? And I literally sat there and was like, oh, let's see. If you look at the percentage number, and like, no, he won them all because he was obviously rigged. Like, it's like sitting there trying to actually do the math. Like, what do you think the percentage number will be of that? Like, yeah, fun times.
Uh, and that's the same thing. Like, you're doing this when people are starving. Like, what were
Yeah,
you doing? You know? So
disconnect, total
that just
disconnect.
sort of,
Like, these guys have no idea how much bananas cost.
yeah. Oh, no idea. Absolutely not. Yeah. So I am, I will definitely watch the Gal Gadot movie, the Cleopatra movie, whenever it comes out in a few years, because I'm sure it's going to be beautiful. But um, I don't know how much, I don't know what is true and what isn't true. But what I know is true is that Cleopatra was, the most powerful woman in ancient Egypt, and it was because she was able to, partner up with two of the most powerful men in Rome,
Okay,
because
I'm
she was
gonna
cool.
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
Okay.
Who is the right casting for Cleopatra?
Oh, that's a good question. Kind of. Want to say maybe Lady Gaga.
That is so good. Because I thought of Lady Gaga as while you were talking about how she like unfurled herself from a carpet. My first thought was Lady Gaga should totally do that at one of her concerts. And then when you brought
Yeah.
up that she met Mark Antony and like had this whole festivity around her
Uh-huh.
coming out, but I was like, I'm positive I've seen Lady Gaga do that. So yeah, way to go, solid
Yeah,
casting.
because she's pretty, but in a weird way, I
She's got a Roman
guess.
nose. She's definitely got a
Yeah,
Roman nose. Yep.
yeah, yeah.
And now that you said that, and I'm looking back at that picture of her, yeah, she looks like Lady Gaga. Like she
Hmm.
doesn't look as good as Lady Gaga, I would argue, but
Yeah, no, that's fair. Maybe, yeah,
closer to Lady Gaga than Elizabeth Taylor and Gal Gadot for sure.
yeah, exactly.
And it would be Mark Antony.
Um, you know who the person who and so I was listening to a and the rest is history podcast, and it's by author Tom Holland, who Dan Carlin like reads and talks about. So is an author named Tom Holland. He's like a British historian. But in that episode, they were laughing, saying that Tom Holland, that actor, should play Mark Antony. that he would be.
That would not be good casting. Yeah, I'm gonna push back on that one. I think I'd be good at Mark Antony. I think I could make it work.
Yeah,
I got the nose, right?
you totally do.
Yeah, there you go. I'm ambiguous. You don't know what I am. I could be Greek. I could be Egyptian.
You
Who
have to cut your
knows?
hair though, have that like Roman Senate haircut, which is just like short hair. It's bizarre.
Definitely not doing that. I'm sticking with my stuck my finger in a light
No
socket
one would know who
hairdo.
you were. Yeah.
I know. I know. That's my identity at this point. Awesome. That was very cool. So that's our second. Well, so this was Egypt and Rome kind of together.
Hmm.
So yeah, we got two Roman stories now, I think, under our belt, and there's
And
probably
two
so many
Egyptian
more.
stories. Well, so yes, okay. One thing I was gonna say first is like, so also our second Egyptian story and how like Egypt was so like it w- with the dad who killed his daughters and how like that was like honor killing. That was a huge thing about it, which I think is
Oh yeah.
interesting. Remember that? And then, but secondly, yeah, that's part of my historical existential dread is that like there's so many stories that like I that we'll never hear and that I want to know about. And when I hear things about like there was a Native American city in the middle of the United States that had, 50,000 people live there and they just found like the ruins of it. And you're like, what happened there?
Yeah.
Like there's so many things that happened there. And then like I also feel like then with like that, that city in Turkey, that underground city in Turkey, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
It is, what is it called? It's called Derinkuyu. So it's literally a farmer in Turkey was like clearing some land and found a hole and went into the hole, and it's a city that could have housed like 100,000 people underground.
Is this recent?
It was like in the past 20 years, but now they've been like excavating it, and there's like rooms and markets and stairs, and it was dark because all underground. And like, what happened in there? Isn't that crazy?
It's wild.
One Joe Rogan plug, I guess, that I have to say is another awesome show on Netflix is Ancient Apocalypse, which is like talking about, you know, but mostly it's like this idea, like what were these cities like, and like when their civilization ended, what did we lose, But Joe Rogan is in it as like the expert, and like
What?
we
Why is
we
he
were
an expert in this?
we were like 5 episodes in, and then all you're like, okay, the guy who is like the main guy is definitely kind of crazy, and you definitely can get the feeling that historians like are not his friend. They're not stoked on him. But and then like episode 5, he's like, here's my friend Joe Rogan. And we were like, oh no. Like, what is this show we're watching? But
Uh,
it's fun to think about existentially to be like, these cities and these places, we have like stones left. Like, what did we lose? We lost all the paper, we lost all the fabric, we lost all the stories. Like, what happened in the world before we remember it?
yeah, yeah. And I mean, with Alexandria, you mentioned Alexandria too. Like the burning of the library of Alexandria, isn't that like the source of like all knowledge the world had? It was like the Wikipedia of the world, and then it was just
Yes.
gone.
Yes. But I've also heard recently that maybe that's not true. I'm like, God damn
You
it.
never know. So many, yeah. You never know. What's so many different variables there. Like so many different ways to like interpret all that stuff, and apparently now it's not true. So there you
I
go.
know. So it's like
There's
I
no
don't know
objective
if any
truth.
of that's true. Yeah, there's no truth, but like it's fun to think about. Like, did that happen? Like, how cool is that for, to think about like, sneaking in and like getting your enemy's head on a platter and then being like, I don't know what's going on. And then like some girl comes into your room in like a sack and or carpet and she's like, let's roll together. And then you're like, okay. And then you go home and all your friends stab you to death. That's
I
a
mean,
wild story.
it definitely sounds Shakespearean, which it was,
Yeah,
and it
it's
also kind of sounds like a Burning Man story. But maybe that's just me.
cool.
Cool.
Thanks for
Well,
listening.
Taylor, yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that. And we'll transition over to, I'm going to call it a layup of the week because this story has gotten a ton of play. So I usually try and find things that are a little bit more obscure, but I'm going to be honest, I've also had a hell of a week and I went with a layup story. So
All right.
apologies, everyone. It's something that y'all already have probably heard about, but I'm going to put my own little spin on it. Uh, I am going to be discussing the Watts family murders.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have some
Uh,
opinions
should
that
we
I'm excited to
start?
share with you.
Should we start your opinions?
I want to say number one, don't kill your family, no matter what.
Okay.
But number two, not Shannon, it's Shannon or whatever.
Shannon, yeah.
Yeah, like Shannon spelled weird. seems super annoying.
Sorry, she's super annoying.
Yeah. Did you watch the Netflix documentary?
I did. I did.
She's like super mean to him in like the videos and like makes fun of him. She's like, ugh, my husband's the worst. This is why he always does this stuff. And just like she just seems like not someone I'd want to be married to.
Yeah, but that's
Again,
the thing. Like, I mean,
you can divorce people.
yeah, I've been married to that. Sorry, I like this. None of that seemed that atypical to me of like a married couple.
Totally.
Certainly
I
not
thought it was
like,
a lot. I thought I would never do that. Like I would never be like on Facebook be like, oh, my husband's the worst. Because like my husband A is not the worst, but B, I would just that's so rude. Like I would never do that. It's just like not in either of our natures to treat each other that way. So when I see that people treating each other that way, I'm like, just get divorced. This is terrible. But we're
so
not fighters, so I don't know.
you don't browbeat Juan into submission on a daily basis.
No, we're actually very nice to each other. Like sometimes we annoy each other, but like for the most part,
Yeah,
we're fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, I here's the thing. I don't know. Maybe I wasn't being totally myself as I was going about doing this because I actually shared your sentiment. Like, but I was just like, oh God, the way things that happened were just so
Oh, I
so
mean, they're
bad
awful. Oh
that
yeah.
it's like I reflected back and I was like, God, like yeah, how could anybody be that annoying, really?
Yeah.
Um,
No, nothing is
listen,
no one deserves what happened to her.
I'll
Zero.
say this. So like I saw a lot of her social media posts, and actually like a lot of her posts were very like glowing of him, saying like, "What amazing father! We're so lucky to have you. The girls are so whatever, this, that, and the other thing." I just there's something really weird to me about like people with like a life, like responsibilities, careers, family, and things like that, being super into like social media.
Hmm.
I mean, at this point, if it's not about my dog or it's not about this podcast, I don't post anything because I just like,
Hmm.
why is my life important enough to give a shit what other people think? Like, it's a weird psychology of like, I need everybody to know about my life and care about it. And it's just like, I'm here for the likes, I'm here for the comments. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand that. And she was like heavy into that, which, like, that would be the part that would drive me insane. It's like, why do you give a shit about what these strangers think about like your ultrasound results or like how
Yeah.
you feel about like, it's like what the girls ate for breakfast or how they were fussy? Like who are you talking to when you post this
Yeah.
shit? Like that's what would drive me nuts.
Yeah. Totally. I
So
get that.
I'll get to this. Okay, I'll get to actually being deliberate about this outline and actually like not going on that side rant. But so I'll start by saying, again, this story has been poured over extensively. You called it out as well, and the fact that there's a whole Netflix documentary on it or series on it, and I don't know for sure, but there's got to be at least a dozen plus podcasts dedicated just this murder because it was both horrific in what happened and also
Hmm.
incredibly stupid. The one thing I would say is if you do decide to do something like this, A, you're never gonna get away with it for sure.
Hmm.
Like that's never gonna happen. So always contemplate suicide immediately after. And if you don't do this when you have like another 50 to 60-year lifespan ahead of you. Like that's the dumb
Yeah.
part of all this. It's like this guy is less than 40 in prison in a solitary cell. Like that's it.
Hmm.
Like that is literally it. It's like, dude, at least wait until like cancer starts kicking in, your liver starts failing, like then maybe go this route. But like don't do it beforehand. That's my
Or like,
take.
I mean, don't do it first and foremost. But like, or have like a better plan. Like you were saying, you said at one point, like send your credit cards to people around the world and have them use them and then just disappear. Like,
Yeah.
I don't
I got it
know.
all worked out. I got it all worked out. So
And like, isn't it
yeah,
John List who like was gone for like a long time after he killed his
because he
family?
did it right. Because he did it right. Because he took used only cash. Okay, we need to
Hmm.
stop giving people game plans here. But the fact that he took out cash, left his car one spot, and then well, John List was also lucky because he was in an era where like there was no cameras, there was no social
That's
media,
true.
there
It
was
was like
no
the
camera
60s.
phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
nobody's gonna see him and like take a picture of it and send it to like the FBI's most wanted. Like
Yeah.
so he had I mean shit, if you're gonna do it, maybe the time to do it is already over for you, but I don't
That's true.
know. Where there's a will, there's a way, right?
Yeah.
So you
But
carpe
don't do
diem
it.
your way to murder your family.
Don't
So
do it. Don't do it.
this, so to your point, like this guy didn't fool anyone for even a minute that he
Yeah.
didn't do it.
Yeah.
It was so obvious and transparent. So obviously, who I'm talking about is Chris Watts, and yeah, it's kind of. I'm not gonna get into the house because the house is actually like really really terrifying. But so the story here starts in Frederick's
Wait,
or Fred.
get into that. Do the terrifying stuff. Continue.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm definitely gonna get. I'm not whitewashing this at all. I'm gonna tell you exactly what happened. I'm actually go into details that I didn't know that Netflix never covered. So
Oh,
we're gonna
nice.
go even grislier on this one than usual. Again, it's kind of a layup story, so like a lot of details are kind of out there. But so the story is in Frederick, Colorado, which is maybe 30 minutes east of Boulder. It's an incredibly white and incredibly middle class town. If you street view their home, you'll see that it's just like a very, very normal looking suburban life that you would live there. There's kids
Hmm.
parks, there's it's that kind of a vibe. I wrote down like think more home improvement than Roseanne. Like it's not trashy, it's just like a notch above that, you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
Our main characters, we're gonna start with who you just mentioned, Shanann, not Shannon. Shanann Watts. I know, it's just like, oh,
It's
even that's
so
fucking
annoying. It just
irritating. It's
like
like, come
it's not her
on.
fault, but god damn it, it's so annoying.
Yeah. She was 34 at the time that this all transpired. She and Chris were married in 2012 after having dated for about 2 years. She worked for, even her job fucking drives me nuts. I gotta stop shit talking to this dead woman. She
I
worked
know.
for a company that produced and sold a product called Thrive, which seems to be kind of like a health and weight loss supplement. Taylor, have you ever heard of a company called Cutco?
Yes, like the knives.
Okay, I wrote down like I thought at first that was like a Texas thing. How do you? Was that like a Nevada thing too, or a California or New York
It's an
thing?
everywhere thing. I think it was like it was one of the like so you could Cutco sell knives like door to door. And I feel like there's like my husband has a great story where he was like he worked for a day for like a thing selling like meat door to door, like steaks. And like that was
Jesus,
something that you could do, but now there's just like I mean there's an infinite number of MLMs you can get involved in. Like the
infinite,
yeah,
infinite. Like
yeah.
that's what I thought this was kind of like. I heard what the business model was. And was like, this is Cutco. This is basically. Hey, I will say, Cutco knives are amazing,
Yes,
but the
dude.
entire business model is you hire a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds, have them
Hmm.
tell their aunt, uncle, and parents to buy these knives, and they see that they're good knives. Like, well, is it good enough for this price? Probably not, but whatever. It's my kid. I love him, so I'll buy the damn
Hmm.
knife, right?
Yeah.
And that's basically what this was. This was like because the model I think is you buy the product, so you are the wholesale drop shipper
Hmm.
of the product.
Right.
So like they make their money because they sell to the salespeople, and the salespeople have to
Hmm.
offload that to everybody else. This guy in college did it. It was so hilarious. He thought he was so smart. He went and bought fucking like $3,000 worth of these supplements. I went to his apartment and we are just gonna like hang out or something. And he just had boxes of this stuff, and he was just like, "This is amazing." And like it turned out we weren't hanging out. He was trying to sell me. He invited me over to his little studio to be like, "This is the best thing ever." Anyways, I didn't buy it, but
I
um,
love when I love that I want to like I love when they do that and Always Sunny like they always whenever they do that where someone buys like a ton of supplements and is trying to sell them it's like such a hilarious bit they do it in Only Murders in the Building which you should watch if you haven't yet but it's great
yeah, yeah. I remember when my mom getting like roped into Tupperware parties
yeah
where like all these women get together and sell Tupperware to each other. Anyways, so that's what Shanann was doing. She was selling this product called Thrive, the weight loss supplement, essentially, and she seemingly made decent money at it. She made about 60 to 70K by some accounts. And apparently the product did actually work. We're going to get into that a little bit later because there is some thought that this product actually had a hand to play in what ended up going on. She was also a lupus sufferer, which is an autoimmune disease where the body's immune system attacks healthy parts of the body. She
hmm
would discuss lupus quite a bit on her YouTube channel and her Facebook posts. Again, it's just like somebody who like thinks that her life is really important and people should know everything about her, which is like just a I don't know, it's a personality type that I just yeah, don't bond with well.
hmm
Yeah, like on the note of
yeah
the social media stuff, like I mentioned to you before, like she did talk a lot about her life, the kids. She talked a lot about Chris. It was just it's like everything had to be documented.
yeah exactly like literally everything like yeah
Yeah, we're on the same page, right? Like
Hmm.
so I actually have somebody in mind that does this, and it's like, man, like it's weird because like they'll post and like nobody will like or comment, but like every day
Hmm.
it's like 17 posts about like what happened today. It's just like nobody cares. Nobody's like maybe the catharsis, like just put this in a diary, like whatever.
Are you talking about me and how much I post on this podcast?
No, I actually really,
Is
really
this an
appreciate that you do.
intervention?
No, no, no. I actually really
Okay.
appreciate like I've actually had that thought multiple times where I'm like, I should be doing as much as Taylor is doing, and then I just get like swamped with work shit, and it's just like I don't want to look at my computer screen. Like at this
I
point,
know.
when I'm doing work Zoom meetings, I tell everyone like I'm turning my camera off and I'm walking because my eyes are fucking bleeding from just staring at the screen, so I don't want to do it anymore. So
100%.
that's part of my problem. But I will try to get better. We should talk about that at some point. I'm gonna
Yeah,
you can do my review, my employee review for Doom to Fail, and tell me how I'm doing.
I will.
Um, so her and Chris had two daughters. Their names were Bella and Celeste. Celeste went by Cece. I'm just gonna refer to her as Celeste here. And they had a third on the way who would have been named
Mm.
Nico. Bella was four at this time. Celeste was three, and Shadan was pregnant. She was 4 months pregnant with Nico at this time. So I think 4 months is showing, right? It's a pretty big. It says
Yeah, you definitely
okay.
told everybody,
You definitely yeah.
um, if you're like conservative and like about it and like worried about it, you wait until like 3 months to tell people, but after that, you've definitely told people. Yeah.
Cool, cool, yeah. Chris himself, he was an oil field operator, and by all accounts, from what you could see, because again, everything was documented, he looked like a happy, devoted father and husband. He was always smiling, and he put on the act, he put on the show, essentially.
Mhm.
Chris was apparently also a fan of Thrive, that supplement company, and he was apparently kind of doughy prior to the events that we'll be discussing and lost somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 50 pounds through some combination of like using Thrive, which is like a patch apparently. You put on like it adheres to your skin and like doses you throughout the day with like a
Oh, it
bunch of
sounds like it works.
vitamins.
Are you trying to sell it to me?
So I have like about 50 pounds of these patches here that are waiting for someone to be shipped to. So if you just Venmo me $600, I will send you this box of Thrive. Um,
Oh my God.
but like
Amazing.
yeah, yeah, like apparently this guy got like pretty jacked and ripped. And what typically happens when someone is Dobie living one way and then they ended up living a different way that gets them jacked and ripped, he started looking outside of his marriage for company, which is
Yeah.
exactly what ended up happening. So that's kind of the secret. If your partner starts suddenly getting like super healthy and good looking, like you're headed to divorce city. So just keep an eye on that as well. He had a mistress who will play into this. I feel pretty bad for the mistress
Me
because
too.
she had no idea, no
Yeah,
idea what was going on.
totally.
Her name is Nicole Kessinger, not Kissinger, Kessinger. And I can actually say her name and not feel that bad for saying it because after this, she changed her name and moved away, and we actually have no idea who she is now, which is
I was gonna
probably
say, should we say
a
her
good
name?
move.
So good for her. Poor
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
That's. I thought about not saying it at first. I was like, probably shouldn't even name drop her at this point. But later on in the article, I was like, she changed her name. She's gone. Like nobody
Yeah,
knows who she is. Somewhere like she probably went into like witness protection program. I don't know.
for real. I'm sure people were mad at her and like she didn't do anything wrong,
No, I'm gonna
you
get
know.
into a lot more of her involvement. Like she was actually a very good person in this situation, in this dynamic.
Poor thing.
So the way she met is that her and Chris also they worked for the exact same company. I think it was called Anadarko, and she was a geologist there as he was a oil field operator.
That's cool.
And yeah, she had her shit together. Like, I mean, that's the thing, like when I learned about her and I saw her pictures, I was like, this was like she thought like, oh, I met this great person, like this is the start of a new
Yeah.
life, and like it was just like
Ugh.
now I've achieved. You know what? It's like that feeling where like, okay, I did all the right things. I went to college, I got my master's degree, I
Hmm.
became this professional, I got hired, I have a 401k, I bought my first house, like I'm doing all the boxes, and I met this person who's going to be like the next thing that's going to, that's
Hmm.
how I felt like that's how she looked in their pictures and didn't work out that way, obviously. So
Poor thing.
Chris had apparently told her that he was undergoing a divorce from his wife. He was like separating, going through a divorce, and was honest that he had two kids with this wife that he was leaving. So she
Hmm.
knew that much, but not anything else. So let's get into the actual events. This happens so fast, which validates how fucking stupid this guy is.
So
On
stupid.
August 13th of 2018, at around 2 o'clock in the morning, it was like 1:48 a.m., Shanann came home from Arizona from a business trip she was on.
Hmm.
That same day, so the morning later on that morning, she had an OBGYN appointment that she didn't go to. And she was also supposed to attend a really important work meeting that she also missed. And she
Hmm.
wouldn't respond to her text messages. So her friend, someone named Nicole Atkinson, grew concerned and went to the house to check on her.
So I don't know if you're gonna say this, but that girl is a badass hero. Like, if you saw the video of her, she was like, I'm not gonna let this go. And
Yeah, I remember
she's the
thinking to
kind of friend you
myself,
need. Yeah.
I know, I was also looking at it from the perspective of Chris of like, man, she is gonna blow up my spot.
Oh yeah. No,
And
he
she
knew
did.
as soon as she got there, he knew that he was like, this isn't gonna last more than like a day, because
Yeah.
she was not gonna let it go. She is just best friend of the decade award to her.
Yeah, she was a dog with a bone. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And like you could tell, like that is not a woman who moves easily. Like she was gonna stand there until this was figured out. Like she
Oh,
was not gonna
100%. She was never
kowtow
gonna
to
back
the
down. Yeah.
anyone. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was
So
fucked.
he was fucked from the second she took an interest because her
She's
interest in
the
this,
best.
yeah, like her interest in this is why like there was never really a chance to like digest anything, absorb it. What's going on? What did I just do? How do I get out of this? Where's my
Yeah.
cash? Where's my passport? Like no, she got in the middle immediately. So
Amazing. Congratulations. You're the best.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So she's there. Obviously, nobody else is. She sees that Shanann's car's in the garage. It's got a window. She can see through it. She calls Chris, expressing concern of what's going on. Then she calls the police. So the police arrive. They do a welfare check, and there's obviously no sign of Shanann or the girls. None of the belongings you would expect of someone leaving a house were actually missing. So like her keys, her
Hmm.
phone, prescriptions, because she had autoimmune disease. She had to have
Yeah.
medication with her. All this stuff was at the house. Chris comes home in the middle of this, and Taylor, have you seen any of the body cam video of this?
That's what I was talking about. Yeah. So he's just like, no, 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 no. And wait, what's her friend's name again?
Nicole.
Nicole. And Nicole is like, no, this. Like it's incredible. Like that's what I've seen.
I have the body cam image like etched in my brain. I actually didn't watch it when I was researching this because I've like read about this case so much before in the past. The way he walks up to the house, it's like that was the moment it just snapped of like I'm fucked. Like
You're
this
like,
is the
oh
like,
my God, when you know
he
you're gonna
didn't
have to be on the news being like, please come
he,
home.
he
You know?
didn't even he didn't open his mouth and the look in his face is just like this is the end. Like and it was. He was right
Asshole.
because
Yeah.
he had a horrible, horrible poker face throughout this entire thing. Anybody who has a remote interest in this case, I mean, obviously the Netflix documentary incorporates the body cam image, but like, there's a lot more. Like, there's a lot of body cam imagery or videos that you can go watch of like this entire interaction he has with the police, he has with Nicole, he has with the neighbors. Like, this guy was inundated. Like, think about this. Obviously, spoiler alert, you just killed three members of your family and a fourth that was on the way. You spend the
Hmm.
entire night getting rid of the bodies.
Then you went to
You're
work.
yeah, and then you come back to this scene of what you just did. The cops are there. You have your neighbor there. You got Nicole there, the immovable object, and you're just
Mhm.
like, he knew that moment that it was kind of over, and you could see it written on his face completely.
Yeah,
So
you asshole. You got caught immediately.
yeah, he just looked totally deceptive, totally shifty. And I actually wrote here, it's irrelevant. We discussed already, but I wrote that maybe if Nicole wasn't so on the ball, he would have had time to gather himself. But
Yeah.
he didn't because she was just right there, just Johnny on the spot.
Get yourself a friend like Nicole.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding. I saw one video where where one of Chris's neighbors, he's with Chris and the police, and he goes, "Hey, I have a camera that captures part of their driveway. If Shanann left mysteriously, we should be able to see it on this video." And Chris, because again, it's all taped.
I'm only
Chris
laughing
is
because
like,
it's like you are the worst. You did it like
dude,
you thought of nothing.
thought of
Like
nothing. Can
what an
you
asshole.
imagine what must be going through your mind and your chest if you're Chris in this situation? He's just like, oh, that's great. Let's look at this video. He has no idea what's
Yeah.
on it.
Oh my
Because we're
God.
gonna find out later, they might have just captured him loading her corpse in the back of the car. But
Yeah.
that's what because he has no idea where it's pointed to. So they go to the neighbor's house. The police and Chris go to the neighbor's house, and you can't make anything out. Like it's like obscured. The truck's too big. There's bushes in the way. You really can't see what's going on. But as the video starts playing, there was a point when Chris looks away, like he like turns his back to the video, almost like just like fuck, this is it. And then he turns around and he has his hand. He picks himself up. He's like, oh, I can't. I have to look at the video. I have to express concern for my family. And so he looks at the video, but then he puts his hands on the top of his head like he's being arrested. He's just. It's not good. It's not
It's
good.
not funny, but like it's funny just because like he's yeah, I just like couldn't have 24 hours ago
Yeah.
was a totally
Not
different thing
even.
for this dude.
Not even. It wasn't even 24 hours. It was way
Oh
less
my
than 20. It
God.
was like maybe like 12 hours. Yeah. Totally different
Amazing.
life. At one point, Chris walks away. I think he like left to go move a car or something, and the body cam video captures the neighbor look at the cop and say, "Yeah, he's acting weird,"
Yeah.
which he was. He was. Everybody could tell he was just not being himself, being normal. There's another video that you just pointed out where he's on the news pleading for Shanann and the girls to come home. And
Ugh.
this is so cringeworthy because like he says it in this tone that is so deadpan, so devoid of feeling, and his eyes are just like black and it's just like
I
I
mean, what are you
I
supposed to
miss
do?
I miss the bright eyes of smiles of my daughters. Please come back, come back. And he's like looking at the camera and just like it's like the most poorly acted thing you've ever seen in your entire life.
Yeah.
Which yeah, like what are you? He has no
What are you
choice. He's got
supposed
to
to
say this,
do?
right?
Yeah, you
Yeah,
have to. I've seen so many of those where like, people are on the news and like the in-laws are crying and like you're in there and you're like, you know what happened and what are you supposed to do? Oh my gosh. It's
you
crazy.
tell him you're going to get coffee and you just fucking leave. Like that's what you do
Another, yeah,
because you're
no.
never gonna get
Well,
out of it.
well, like, okay, maybe you'll talk about this eventually, but didn't the other Peterson who killed his wife, didn't he like try to leave to Mexico and dyed his hair? And he got
Yeah,
caught.
but he was stupid because he stopped to go golfing. He stopped to do a back nine on the golf course with his dad, with like a wig in the back of his car with like $100,000 in cash. It's like, dude,
Right, right,
you got all the evidence that
right.
prove your flight risk on you. You don't have 3 hours to play golf today. Like,
Right, right. White people
anyways,
problems. Yeah, continue.
seriously. So Chris apparently he goes willingly to the police station because he's not under arrest at this point. They're just like they don't know anything, right? They don't know if anybody's dead. So he goes there to answer questions, and he also goes to take a polygraph test. He obviously fails the polygraph when asked to get anything to do with his wife or the kid's disappearance. The police grill him on this, and at first he maintains a story that he has no idea what happened to them. By this point, that was the story. I have no idea what happened to them. And then his dad is at the police station, and he asks to see his dad. And again, just like going back, like you got to remember, like you look at him and you're like, you look at the picture of him as a family, like what a wholesome dad looking guy. You got to remember, some people can look normal and be complete morons on the inside. Like this guy was
Yeah.
one of those guys who just seemed like a normal all American dude and had rocks for
Hmm.
brains.
Hmm.
He's being taped, obviously, in a police interrogation room, and he brings his dad in, and he whispers to his dad as though he doesn't think that people can hear him whispering to his dad that he confesses that he killed her. He tells her,
Oh my
I killed Shanann. And the dad's concerned, puts his hands on his shoulder, like, what happened, son? You can tell me. And then he starts, like, coming up with the story. Like, he literally just kind of invents the story in the spot, saying that he walked in on, he said that he told her that he's having an affair. She flew into a rage, killed the girls. So he, in a rage, killed her. And the
hmm.
dad's just
Hmm.
like, I mean, I guess, I mean, I don't know. If you're a parent, I guess you believe what your kid tells you because you don't want to believe the alternative. And so the dad's just
Yeah.
very concerned and is like, yada, yada, yada. So, anyways, that's what's going on. And the police come back in and he starts kind of unraveling and telling this story. And I wrote here that I really loved watching the police interview of Chris because they were just so good and patient about drawing out the lies and teasing them apart one
Hmm.
by one. Part of this methodology is like, she's the bad one, right? We all know she's the bad
Hmm.
one. You're the good one. You did it for a reason. It makes sense. Like,
Hmm.
think about it this way: like they break it down lie by lie. So during this process, he goes from I have no clue what happened to I'm having an affair to I told her I want a divorce to she killed the kids to then I had to kill her, ultimately ending with their bodies are in crude oil tanks at my work. I mean,
Ugh.
that's the disparity of the hours long conversation they had here. So the prevailing theory is that Chris and Shanann got into a fight the morning she came home from that work trip. Chris essentially saying that I'm having an affair and I'm leaving you, basically.
Hmm.
Chris strangled her in their bedroom, and Bella walked in on him doing this. He then wrapped Shanann in a bed sheet and placed her in the back of his work truck, the floor of the back seat, not the bed of the truck, and
Right.
then placed the two girls in the back seat as well.
But they're
They
alive,
were,
right?
yeah, they're alive, and they were asking him, "What's wrong with mommy?" And he
That
was like,
is
"Yeah."
the most sociopathic, unbelievable thing I can possibly imagine.
I was like wondering, like,
What
what are you
the hell?
thinking?
I
Like,
mean, it just must be like total panic, but like, oh my God, don't strangle people. Well, like I said earlier, maybe we need there's things I want to strangle, so maybe like a fake strangler that you could strangle, like a stress strangling thing, because you're so angry at the world. But like, God, I mean, if he's gonna kill the girls anyway, like, why make them sit through that drive?
yeah, that's why I didn't understand. I was like, "Why didn't you just do it at the house? If you're gonna, maybe he didn't know he was gonna do it. Maybe he was just
Yeah, that's
like,
true. He was trying
he
to
was
figure out
like,
what to do.
yeah, maybe like that drive to wherever he was going was the time he like decided, oh, I guess I have to do it now. But like, why?
Yeah.
Because because I'm trying to do the math on this. Hold on, let me do serial killer math real quick. So like, okay, let's say you just killed your wife and you have two kids, and at that point, if you have even paid any attention to true crime, you know that you're going down for it because it's always the
Hmm.
husband every single time.
Yeah.
So at that point, wouldn't you? I mean, you just kind of take off with the girls, right? Like, why do you need to? Oh, man, you know what? I'm sorry. I forgot he was stupid as shit. He thought that he could do all this and start a whole new life with his girlfriend Nicole. That's what it was.
Right, right.
That's the logic. That's
Got
I
it.
told I was like keep forgetting this guy's really really dumb. Okay, sorry. Back on track now. So the field where Chris worked was about 40 miles from the house, and that's where he ended up taking all of them. I don't know exactly how long it took, but I would assume it'd take at least 40 minutes, maybe 60 minutes to think about what to do once you get there. And once you arrive at the oil field, he took Shanann out and dropped her face first into a shallow grave, which apparently resulted in a partial birth of the kid because he like just plopped her down and the belly just compressed. Ugh,
Oh
gross.
no.
Yeah, really, really gross.
That's horrifying.
Yeah. He then drove a bit further up to near the oil tanks and took Celeste out of the truck and strangled her before dropping her into the oil tank. This is a tank. This is a huge. It's so scary to me.
What?
This type of
It's
stuff is
so
just
dark. It's such like a
they're
dark thing.
huge. It's like this is where like they fill barrels
Oh my
up
God. It makes me
from.
want to
This
throw up.
is it's crazy scary. Yeah.
This is horrifying.
He then turned his attention to Bella. Later on, he would say that he was surprised at how much she struggled, saying, "This is a quote: Little quiet Bella had a will to live. Out of the three, Bella's the only one that put up a fight." Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Oh
worth
my
knowing
God.
that after the conviction and everything, he kind of gave up the whole story about Shadan. He came clean basically about
Hmm.
everything. So that's why we have a lot of quotes about this from him. So he then took Bella and dumped her body in the other oil tank. There was two tanks sitting next to each other. He later would say, quote, I couldn't this is so grotesque the way he phrased
Oh
this.
my God.
I understand what he meant, but the way he phrased it was really grotesque. The quote is, I couldn't believe how easy it was to just let her drop through the hole and let her go. I heard the splash when she hit the oil. The part of this like grotesque is like where he's like, I can't believe how easy it was to let her go. Because like I
Yeah.
get what he's saying, but it's like you're letting your daughters you know what I mean? It just hits different.
Wow.
So turning back to Chris's girlfriend Nicole, on this day, so the day of the murder, he texts her saying that his wife had taken the kids on a play date and never returned. She ended up learning that Chris was still married because of that news report I mentioned earlier that was absolutely just like gut wrenchingly cringe.
Hmm.
She would ask him about his family and he would just kind of avoid answering questions or change the subject. So like she's getting that like something is happening here. Because I mean, if she watched the same video that we all did of that interview, it's obvious that there's something going on here.
Yeah.
She later would state, quote, "It got to a point that he was telling me so many lies that I eventually told him that I did not want to speak to him again until his family was found." So she was like setting that boundary. Like, no, no, no. Like, you're something's going on. You're doing something. Like, you can't
Yeah.
talk to me anymore. Going back to so shortly thereafter, this trial became the trial itself was actually really cut and dry because Chris pled guilty to the murders. Like, there is no what's the defense? There's zero way to defend this case, right? So he
Yeah.
confessed to the murders. He pled guilty. He was only spared the death penalty because Shanann's family requested the state not pursue it, thinking that like there's already been enough death. We don't need to kill somebody else in the middle of all this.
That's nice of them, but
It's is it though? Because to me, I'm like, I imagine the life you had, and then imagine that you're in a cell for 23 hours a day, and you're like 33 years old. Like, I think I would rather take the needle.
totally. No, you're right. So I feel like they were like, so who knows what they were actually thinking, but maybe they're like, let that man suffer by himself for the next 50 years, the piece of shit,
Yeah, yeah.
which will be
He
great.
yeah, he received 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, and then another 48 years for the unlawful termination of Shanann's pregnancy, and another 36 years for 3 counts of tampering with the deceased body for what he did to them after they were dead. He is being housed in a maximum security prison in Wisconsin now. He had to be moved around quite a bit because his profiles were, or his crime was so high profile, and because he committed this crime against his own kids,
Hmm.
that he's not allowed to mingle and he can't socialize with general population because somebody will kill him like immediately, right?
Hmm.
It's presumed now that he's in protective custody and that he's in solitary confinement, which essentially means that he's in his cell for 23 hours a day. He gets 1 hour out for rec time, and that's basically it. He essentially has no interactions with any other human being in real life. So
Wow.
in person, yeah. I don't recall where I heard this, but I do remember hearing that he sometimes will have visual hallucinations where he will see the girls in his prison cell with him,
Good.
which, yeah, like I totally believe this. I think that, again, like if, like, again, he's not even 40. He's still in his
Yeah.
30s. And you have a minimum 30 to like 60 years left
Wow.
till you die in this prison cell. Like, you're probably going to start seeing shit.
Yeah. I hope that they
Apparently,
haunt the shit out of him.
it's got to
They
be
should.
so, oh man, like, yeah.
Yeah.
Because like you know what, like I'm not gonna say I get it, but like okay, you went into a blind rage, you killed your wife, okay, but then you had like an hour to think about this with your kids. Like that's the part of it that is like the hardest one for me to like actually digest. Is like
Yeah.
what he did to the girls. Like that's so next level crazy.
Yeah.
So I
Totally.
do. He should be haunted for sure, but. It hasn't stopped his adoration from women. So he apparently gets a
Ugh.
ton of like sexy photos and letters
Ew.
and stuff like that from women who are in love with him. So yeah, that's a whole
How
subset
hard is
of dating.
dating? Is dating
I
that hard? Like, I don't know. I just feel like it's that hard that you have to like write someone a murderer an email or I don't
I
know.
mean, dating someone well adjusted is hard. Obviously, these women are not well adjusted, right? Is
Yeah.
that safe to say? Like
Yeah.
there's
No,
probably some
it's
like cobwebs and bats in their brains floating around there.
I yeah, and I don't get it. I don't know what it is. Like, is it it's there's something real. I don't know. Like, I don't understand what could possibly be when you find when you're like, I have to it's a convicted murderer. I feel like I remember reading in the beginning of this, people were like, "There's no way you did it. I love you." And you're like, "He said he
Ugh.
did it. What is wrong
Yeah.
with you?" Is there,
Yeah.
I feel like this is another plug for widow or won't ya? Because women in their 30s are getting desperate. So maybe they can find a widow who's like a widow by not murder.
There's a widow by not murder.
Is
Yeah.
anyone a marketing executive that wants to talk to me about widow or won't ya? Please give me a call.
We're trying to get we're trying to get famous people. Um, if we can get famous and help widows, you know what? That is the sweetest reward of all.
Definitely.
So the house itself, Saratoga Lane, they purchased a house in 2013 for just shy of $400,000. The house was listed for sale starting in April of 2019. I don't actually have the very, very first original price that it was listed for, but counting the price changes, there was 19 price changes from when the house listed until a few months later in July of 2019. Ultimately, the house ended up being priced somewhere around $415,000, at which point the listing was just completely removed. Somebody
Yeah.
just delisted the house. I I actually don't know what happens in these situations. Like I would assume so Chris owns the house, but obviously he's in jail, so his assets and his liabilities, I don't know what
Right.
happens.
Well, is there like is that what the civil trial is for? For like, what's it called? Like the money that like for the family to like get money, like Ron Goldman's family, that's where they were able to like sue and try to get the money. Not that they didn't do it for the money, but isn't that the one where money's involved?
So they didn't have this. Yeah, yeah. That's where the punishment isn't prison, it's money. But they didn't
Right.
have that. I mean, Chris has nothing,
Oh,
right? Like he has no assets, he has nothing. Let's like
right.
maybe oh, you know what? Actually, maybe it would have gone to Shenan's estate. Maybe it would have gone to
Yeah.
Shenan's estate, and then if she didn't have a will, then it would have just gone to her parents because her kids are
Yeah.
dead. So
Yeah. Ugh.
it goes up to the parents. So maybe it was them that actually started listing the house. Yeah, but
Yeah. You
it's
definitely, I can't believe no one
confusing.
bought it though. I mean, it just feels
You
like,
seriously, you can't believe that nobody bought it.
yeah, I can't believe no one bought it because it's like a nice house in a nice neighborhood. And like, what else? Like, they could sell it for like half that, just like get rid of it.
That
Don't you feel, I
that is
mean,
so
otherwise,
disgusting. That is what a that house would scare the shit out of me.
totally, but they don't want, why, but they don't want it anymore. I would just want to be like, get it out of my everything. I never want to think about it again.
Oh, you're saying the family.
Yeah.
Okay, okay, yeah, yeah. Just list it for like $50,000. Who gives a shit? Just like get it sold.
Yeah. Like, I want absolutely
It's
nothing to do with this place. Get rid of it.
somehow, some way, this house was purchased. Like, what would it be? It would be 4 months ago.
Really?
Like 4 months ago, the house sold, and it apparently sold for $600,000.
Whoa, that's way more.
Yeah, way more. Maybe I don't know. Maybe like the bad vibes wore off. But $600,000 for that house seems like a lot. I mean, that is you're living on a ghost house. Like
Well, well, yes, but there's
I
plenty of
feel
ghost
like you're
houses.
advocating. I feel like you're really advocating for this house.
Well, no, I feel like there's tons of murder houses, like that Los Angeles murder house that was so cool and like fascinating where that guy killed his family, and then like it was like a time capsule inside, and they said there were like Christmas presents that were still there because he happened on Christmas Eve, and like all this stuff that was like real fun and spooky, and then someone bought it and they gutted it, and then they ran out of money, so they just like sold it again, gutted, and it was like super disappointing because it was really cool, like a cool 60s time capsule, and like you stayed at a haunted house hotel once, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah. But didn't we talk about buying that house, like pooling a bunch of our money together and like
Yes.
having
Ugh.
like multiple people
It was a
go in and buy
cool
that
house
together?
too. Yeah.
But I think it's a I think it's like generations removed thing. So I think that if the people who were killed would have been dead anyways, that is the right amount of time to wait before living in a murder house.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Okay.
So hold on. So okay, so the youngest would have been Nico, so he hadn't been born yet. So let's say this happened in 2018. So let's say he probably wouldn't live past 100. So like in 2120 is like when that house isn't officially scary anymore, I think.
That's fair.
That's the rule. Just made it
Yeah.
up.
But I mean, it's a long time to wait.
I know. Especially with modern houses, I'm gonna actually be staying at that point. But
Yeah,
yeah,
we're in a recession.
yeah. Who can wait? Um, but that's this case. And like I said, like look, I know that everybody's heard about it. I try to find more obscure stuff. I'm gonna find more obscure stuff for next week. But like I said, this week was a nightmare. And also this case is incredibly like red flaggy and horrible. And
Hmm.
again, like I mean, okay, so going back to the theme of the show, a big red flag is don't let your partner get fit. That's a really bad sign. Like just dose them with like bacon grease in their coffee or something. Like don't let them. If I mean they're trying to run away if they're trying to get fit.
I just wonder, like, this like middle America life, what is that like? When like the mom has the MLM and all of these social media posts talking about her family trying to, I don't know what, become an influencer. And then the dad is like not great. And there's like
It's
all
so
these like
cliche.
weird, it's so cliche. It's such like a middle of America boring story
Yeah, two and a
until the
half
murder part.
kids, two
Yeah.
and a half kids. The dad has a mistress. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very middle America,
Yeah.
except it
Well,
ends in a not middle American way. It ends in Halloween
yeah.
Town is where it ends.
Yeah. Ugh, those poor babies.
Yeah.
Just le abandon your kids,
Abandon
father.
your kids.
Like
Abandon your kids.
drop them
Just
off somewhere. They had family that like would have like he could have dropped them off at Shanann's parents' house and he could have driven for at least a week, you know?
by the time Nicole showed up, the kids would have been like waking up. He could have just left them there.
He
Been
could
like,
have left them there. You're right.
like yeah, like it's like daddy's taking his passport and this wig and just leaving. Like, do that.
He's gone. Yeah, and they'll find him in like 6 to 9 days, tops, you know? But at least the girls are still alive.
He
There's just a
legit
reason to
thought
do
that he was just
that.
gonna like move on with his life. These guys are he's so stupid.
What an asshole.
What a moron.
Ugh. Yeah.
Anyways,
Anyway,
that is our story for this week. We will
thank
have
you.
more next week. Are there any disclaimers we want to throw out there or any requests, Taylor?
Yes, I definitely want to again thank everybody who gives us good feedback and it has liked us on Apple Podcasts and left reviews there. That is really the way for other people to find our podcast. So we actually yesterday I was looking at our stats and we crossed 900 downloads. So super awesome that people have been listening to it. I know a lot of those are me listening to them over and over again, but still, it's super exciting that people are listening. So please share wherever you can and just liking us on social media and sharing a post is super helpful because there might be someone in your life who would be interested in listening to our stories because we're having a really good time telling them and we want people to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also say if there's bad feedback, also feel free to share that. But I'm not farting. I'm not recording myself farting. So like tell me anything else. Like just I'll tell you. You know what? I'll actually volunteer when I do choose to do that. And I'll just punctuate it somewhere in the podcast and we'll include it in the descriptions. But that has not happened yet.
Great.
I should probably edit that out, right?
That's hilarious. Well, good for you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Farz.
Cool. Thanks, Taylor. Have a great day. Hopefully the sickness wears off. And thank you everyone for listening.
Woo.
Bye all.